coming. I'm Adult Services Librarian Paul Sevilla. Welcome to our Summer Reading Roundup program. Tonight you will hear 25 unique titles recommended by me and several of my co-workers that I was able to round up for you all. We made sure that we're not recommending the same book. We took great pains to not have duplicates. In fact, if we had duplicates, we arm wrestled for who will get to talk about that book. So, but before we begin, a word about this year's summer reading program, Read Beyond the Beaten Path, sponsored by the Friends of the Livermore Public Library. It's our ongoing and until August 17th. So the summer reading program is for all ages, babies to adults. You can help Livermore reach our community reading goal of 3 million minutes this summer. And who here is, just show of hands, who here is doing the summer reading program? All right, almost everybody here. Okay, if you haven't done so already, register to play by going to livermore.beanstack.org or by downloading the Beanstack app. You can win cool prizes for doing something you love, reading. Now I'm delighted to introduce my fellow presenters today, Teen Services Librarian and Springtown Librarian, Caitlyn Lung. Teen Services Librarian, Jennifer Mosel. Rincon Library Librarian, Nallely Cervantes. And Supervising Library Assistant, Reuben Ramirez. All right. So let's welcome our first presenter, Caitlyn.
This was a super cozy read with just a little bit of fantasy mixed in. Our protagonist is Wallace. And the first chapter or so introduces him as pretty much the worst caricature of an evil lawyer you could possibly imagine. He's heartless, uncaring, and just really not a great guy. The next chapter, he's dead. And he wakes up at his own funeral. And he spends pretty much the rest of this book as a ghost. And his reaper comes to collect him and take him to the Sharon house, which is where his ferryman lives. And the ferryman is Hugo. And Hugo, his purpose is to prepare Wallace for whatever's beyond. And through his time at the Sharon house, Wallace grows. He learns how to be a better human. He learns how to be a friend. Because at his funeral, he found that his ex-wife was there, his junior lawyer partners were there, and he could hear them. They couldn't know that he was there. And all they really did was complain about him. He didn't really have any good friends in life. So upon death, he was able to grow as a human and basically start off the afterlife as something better. And he does this through his companionship with Hugo and May, that's his reaper. Nelson is Hugo's uncle there, also at the Sharon house. They bond over tea and just the daily life there at the house. And it's really lovely, very cozy, and a very nice book to read. Also available from this author, was recommended last year, The House on the Cerulean Sea. Another nice, cozy, lovely fantasy book. Second pick is A Song for the Wild Goat by Becky Chambers. This one is another very gentle read. It's a very short read too, but it is more science fiction than fantasy. It's basically a tale about the meaning of life. How does one define purpose in their life. Our main character is a monk. Their name is Dex. They are non-binary. And they start off in a monastery, and they're not exactly sure if that's the right fit for them. They want to be a monk. That's good. But they develop a case of wanderlust. They want to get out. They want to live beyond the walls of the monastery. So they decide that they want to be a tea monk. And in this Earth-like sci-fi world, tea monks, they get in their little wagon and they travel from village to village, and they offer tea. So they're part therapist, they're part bartender. They offer companionship, and they console you if you're sad, or they celebrate your happiness with you. And it's really, really nice kind of idea there. And in this world, humans live in a post-industrial society. So they had factories, and the world at one point looked very much like ours. But then the robots gained sentience. The robots in the factories woke up. They're like, hey, we don't really like this. Can we not? And people are like, oh, okay, no, let's let you be free. So the robots took over part of the wilderness, and humans haven't seen robots in several hundred years. Our monk friend Dex happens upon one in their travels, and Dex and the robots, Moscap, basically become friends and talk about how it's okay if you don't change the world in big ways. It's okay to change the world with a cup of tea, with a caring word, and little things in your life can have purpose too. I read those first two books back to back this winter, and it was really lovely, cozy books to sit up with a blankie and a cup of tea. So those are excellent recommendations from at least my I think they're excellent, cozy books to read. Okay, so, oh yes, the sequel comes out very soon. Also by this author, Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is the first in another series that this author does. It's one of my new favorites. That one's more of like a space opera, so there's like spaceships and aliens and all sorts of really cool stuff, but it's more like slice of life. So you get to learn like the everyday life of the crew on their big adventure. So it's pretty fun. Next pick is completely different in tone. This one's called Gideon the Ninth by Tasman Muir. And our titular character there, Gideon, she's an orphan. She's a servant to the house that she serves. She is brash, she's crude, she's skilled with the blade. She is really everything that a cavalier, which is this world's term for the basically the guard for the royalty. She's pretty much everything they shouldn't be, except skilled with a blade. She just is good with the wrong kind of blade. She uses bigger swords than the more elegant rapiers that are favored by the cavaliers. But she gets roped into being the guard by Harrow. She is the heir to the ninth house. There are 9 houses, and they're all necromancers in space. So this is a kind of a magic, sci-fi fantasy mashup. Basically, the emperor has called all of the heirs to his houses, the 9 houses, to join him on his planet and compete in these trials to see who's going to be his like right-hand man sort of thing. And this book was hilarious. It was action-packed. There's a mystery to solve in there, and it was a lot of fun. There is a sequel, Harrow the Ninth, which is available now. If you do read it, be warned that its tone is completely different. So they're basically told through the perspective of their title characters. Well, Harrow is funny and brash and everything. Gideon is brash. Harrow is very cold and calculating, and the tone of the book is very different. But big payoff at the end. The third one comes out in September, and I look forward to seeing what Nona's voice is like. So, next one is a by Naomi Novik. Now, this one is kind of like if Hogwarts was actively trying to kill the students. Well, more so than it was in the Rowling's books. So basically, in this world, the wizards, or witches and wizards, whatever, decided that the safest place for all the students to be was in this school. It's not the safest place for the students, though. It was safer for everyone else. Because the monsters, the Maleficaria, or Mals they call them, are attracted to like the big source of mana that these students represent. Because teens are going through puberty, their power is growing exponentially, they don't necessarily have control over their magic, so the monsters are like sucked in, and they really just want to attack all the kids. And there was going to be, adults caught in the crosshair there. So a long time ago, the adults all decided, okay, so we'll just stick all the kids in this school in the void where the monsters can just have at them. The kids will learn. Great. They'll become witches. Great. If they survive. And only about half of them do. Until our protagonist, Elle, whose the name is, or that's her nickname, it's short for Galadriel. Her mom's kind of a hippie living in a commune and is a very famous healer. Elle is complete opposite of that. She is basically her, she is best at dark, death, powerful magic. She gives off bad vibes. There's another student there, Orion Lake. He's kind of like the Harry Potter analog in this story. He's a big hero, butts into everything, tries to save the day. And he's saving so many more students than have ever survived before. And it causes some problems. And, well, you'll just have to read to see if they all survive. Yeah?
My question was, what is the genre? Is it more like thriller, like horror, or is it more like slice of life?
Honestly, it's pretty funny a lot of times. It's told from the first-person perspective of Elle, the main character, so you kind of get a lot of her snark. You kind of get her talking through her thought process. I think it's kind of like a fantasy adventure sort of thing, them trying to survive their school year, deciding whether or not to work together to fight off the monsters or whether to kind of backstab each other. So, that's the first book. The second book is out now, and the third one, again, comes out in September. And here's my last pick, Spy Family. So this one is a manga by Tatsuya Endo. And our protagonist here is Twilight. He's a super spy. And he is tasked with preventing a war between the East and the West in these fictional countries. And so, to do that, he needs to infiltrate a prestigious school and create a fake family with a fake kid and everything, or a real child, his fake family, and get all buddy-buddy with the child of one of the bad guys. And he needs to get close to the bad guy in order to save the world. And so he goes to an orphanage to pick up a kid, and he finds a woman. Oh, yes?
So are all the people in the family spies, or are they?
I was just about to get to that. So they have a wonderful little family. So he finds a woman to agree to be his wife. So she enters into it for her own reasons. It turns out he's a spy. She's an assassin, and he doesn't know that. And the child is a telepath. And, some shenanigans happen because the kid's the only one who knows what all the grown-ups around her are doing. And it's hilarious because you get a lot of their everyday slice of life sort of stuff. You get Anya, that's the child, at school, so you get her interaction with her teachers and other students and friends. You get some of their quirks of their everyday life. The mom, Yor, is not a good cook, which gives that reaction from them. So it's just a ton of fun. I would describe this as like an action sitcom. It's a real light in tone. The library has the first 7 volumes, so there's plenty to keep you busy, although plenty to wait for because sometimes the manga are hard to get a hold of. But there are my recommendations, and I hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Caitlyn. Okay, so my first recommendation is the novel The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So who here likes books and movies exploring parallel universes? Well, you know, the scientific theory of parallel universes really interests me. And it's all the rage right now. In fact, 2 hit movies this year feature that in their plot. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Who here has seen that? Okay. And Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Highly recommend that movie. That's a good one. So Matt Haig's latest novel is about a severely depressed woman who is given the chance to experience parallel versions of herself via the Midnight Library. So Nora Seed enters a different version of her life just by opening a book in this mysterious library that she somehow was transported in. And you know, the purpose of the Midnight Library is a mystery, and it'll keep you turning the page of this wonderful novel. So, you know, Midnight Library, I'm sure it's a bestseller. There's a holds list right now for our library copy. But I highly encourage you to check it out or put it on hold because it's interesting, amusing, and deeply moving. And I think we can all relate to that, I'm sure, to this character. So, all right, so my second recommendation is the sci-fi novel, The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. So if you're looking for a fun read, then check out this book. So this is his Scalzi's first standalone adventure since the conclusion of his New York Times bestselling Interdependence trilogy, which we have in the library. So this book is a mix of Jurassic Park, Pacific Rim, and The Office. It's got that humor in it. It's a light read that delivers the humor and the thrills. So, and this is one of those books that would make for a good movie too. So, and it's got an alternate universe, and you know how I love that. So, monsters and nuclear explosions. What's not to love? All right. So, I chose this novel, Billy Summers by Stephen King, not just because it has the word summer in it, but because I love Stephen King books. I think Stephen King books are perfect for the summer for some reason. Stephen King movies and books. So this one isn't scary, but more like in the noir fiction genre. It's about an assassin with a unique set of skills and unusual character traits. You know, people think he's simple-minded, but as a killer for hire, Billy Summers is the best in the business. As he prepares for his last hit, he rescues a troubled youth and decides to show her the ropes. So Stephen King has a way of making readers empathize with not-so-good characters, like a killer for hire. And he pulls it off with Billy Summers because you really root for him throughout the novel. Okay, so Billy Summers. My fourth recommendation is Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Ribay. So Randy Ribay is a Filipino-American author. He was born in the Philippines and raised in the Midwest, and he lives in San Francisco. So I'm proud and always support Filipino authors like Ribay. So Patron Saints of Nothing is a National Book Award finalist and a recipient of several other accolades. So this book is about the past, present, and future of the Philippines. It tells the story of a Filipino-American teenager named Jay Reguero, who travels to the Philippines to uncover the truth about his cousin's murder. So Patron Saints of Nothing is the real deal. It's a unique and intimate look into the extrajudicial murders in former President Duterte's war on drugs in the Philippines. So it's powerful, it's real. If you want to get a glimpse or an idea of the crisis happening in the Philippines and the hardship people go through there, especially during the Duterte's administration, then I highly recommend this book. And it's a kind of like a good mystery too, is that you're following Jay as he's trying to uncover the truth to what happened to his cousin. So the last book I'm recommending is a nonfiction book titled We're Not Broken, Changing the Autism Conversation by Eric Garcia. So I picked this book because it's really insightful. You know, journalist Eric Garcia is a journalist with autism, and he presents a comprehensive survey of autism in the U.S., incorporating the perspectives of autistic people from all walks of life, in addition to sharing his experiences as an autistic journalist working at high-profile news outlets in Washington, D.C. This is an eye-opening book that helped me understand the history and state of autism in this country. I highly recommend the audiobook, which is narrated by the author. And I had a chance to interview Eric Garcia during the library's Livermore Reads Together program last March, and he's very down to earth. He's just incredible. And you can actually view the recording of this virtual conversation on the library's YouTube channel. So those are my recommendations, and now please join me in welcoming our next presenter, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mosel, and for the next few hours tonight, I am your Teen Services Librarian. Tonight is my last shift with Livermore Public Library, and I'm going to miss my patrons, my YAVs, which are our young adult volunteers, and my coworkers, plus I love my job. But thanks to Paul, I get to go out doing what I love, which is Reader's Advisory. So I'm really excited to be able to tell you about some of my favorites over the last year. Before I start telling you about my picks, just remember that a couple of the books I tell you about are actually shelved in the adult section. So you'll gobble them up if you're a teen, I guarantee it. Just be aware that one of them has a teensy bit more adult content than is found in the teen section. And then 3 of the books are shelved in the teen section, and adults, you'll gobble them up. I try and remember that the age thing is just about marketing. That's it. It's about marketing. It's not about good stories. You can find good stories anywhere in the library. So first up is Alaso Way by Darcy Little Badger. If lives were books, his final chapter came way too soon. Picture an America very similar to our own. Homework, best friends, pistachio ice cream. But in Alaso's America, there's magic, monsters, and travel through fungi rings? Yup, you heard right. Speedy travel similar to Star Trek's Transporter, except through mushrooms. And actual physical mushrooms. Not eating them, but by entering them. In Alaso Ways America, she has the ability to raise ghosts, which is quite convenient for a dog-loving teen because her favorite companion is her recently deceased dog. Unfortunately, her cousin dies, but before he passes on to the next world, he connects with Ellie, Alaso Way's nickname, asking her to please protect his family because he wasn't killed in a car accident like they say, he was murdered. As she goes digging for the solution to this story, she discovers the details are far more gruesome than even you or I or anyone could imagine. Next up is Once Upon a Broken Heart. Heroes don't get happy endings, they give them to other people. If you know me, you know I love Caraval, which was Stephanie Garber's debut novel. Did you remember when you were reading Caraval that it's only a game? If you read that enchanting trilogy, you're in for a treat because this is a return to the world of the immortal fates that we learned about in Finale and Legendary. If you didn't read the trilogy, why? Have I not cornered you and like shoved it into your hand as you're walking out the library? Definitely need to make sure you go into that fantastic fantasy world. If you love carnivals even a little bit, Caraval will just pull you in. If you didn't read the trilogy, that's okay, because Once Upon a Broken Heart, well, it's set in the same world. Even the author herself has said that you don't have to have read the trilogy to get started on Once Upon a Broken Heart. This one is about the lusciousness of the Prince of Hearts. And yes, he's luscious. He is one of the immortal fates, and he tries to help sweet Evangeline Fox mend her broken heart when she learns that her stepsister has married her beloved. This is a dangerous game, and those pesky fates, you gotta be careful what you offer in a bargain because they always take more than you think you're gonna give them. By the way, Stephanie left her fans hanging at the end of Once Upon a Broken Heart. However, The Ballad of Never After publishes in just a few weeks on September 13th. But she's keeping her lips sealed. We have no idea if there are 2 or 3 or more in this series. To say that her fans are chomping at the bit to get at this book is putting it mildly. Then I have Hollow Fires by Samira Ami. And I have to apologize to my colleague, Nallely, because I gave her an advanced reading copy after I was done reading it. And she texted me and said, I can't believe you gave this to me right now. So I do want to warn you, it does highlight some events that are going on in our news right now. So you need to be super, super careful that you could have some triggers there because it does bring current events into this fictional world. Truth, reading helps you discover who you are. Reading makes you more empathetic. So once again, given the volatile events right now, I begin with a warning. It's heavy. It is fantastic. It will make you think. It will open your eyes. It will challenge every one of your beliefs. It is a reflection on racism in our world today. And you need to proceed with caution, but also read with a stack of Post-it notes handy, because you will be marking things that you're going to want to talk to other people about who've read the book. So a journalist is supposed to find the facts, repeat the story, or report the story, and leave biases out of the story. Safia dreams of being a journalist and actually adores her job as the high school's newspaper editor. But when she finds the body of a murdered boy and begins investigating the story, leaving those biases behind becomes harder and harder and harder. That murdered boy, well, Jawad had built a jetpack out of recycled materials. He brought it to his school very excitedly to show his after-school maker club and its advisor. Another teacher thought it was a bomb. he was arrested. He was cleared quickly that same day after hours being interrogated, but that jetpack that got him arrested eventually got him killed. I highly recommend Hollow Fires for a book club. This was one that there was so much to discuss within the story. It will lead to discussions on the world we live in, the prejudices we hold as hard as we try not to, and I hope it will also lead to some discussion on how we can make changes for the better. Next up, this is one that I vacillated between this one and another one. What am I going to do? Am I going to do? What am I going to do? However, the quote, Nora, what's the math? I majored in nouns. I use it all the time now, except instead of saying Nora, I say Brian, who's my husband, because he's the engineer and he's the one that knows the math. I don't know math. I found this quote in there. This is one of those books that you're going to laugh and you are going to get all the feels. Oh my gosh, I am late to the Casey McQuiston train, but I am on it full on, and I will be beating the door down to read her new book, I Kissed Shara Wheeler, which is in the back right now, being processed and labeled and cataloged, and it's killing me that this is my last night and I'm not going to get my hands on it before I leave. I might have to stop at Barnes & Noble. So, yeah, I know. In Red, White, and Royal Blue, you get to meet the son of the president and the son of the queen, who move quickly from serious enemies. I mean, there is an incident with a wedding cake that is a little terrifying. They move from enemies to friends because the publicity teams kind of make up. It's like, you got to do this, it's on the news. But suddenly they fall in love. So you get Alex and Harry, or sorry, see, I did it. It's Henry, it's Harry, it's Prince Harry. You will read it and you will go, Casey's got a thing for Prince Harry, I just know it. It totally is. So as the sparks that flew from being enemies changed into sparks of romance, you are going to shrivel up and die as you read the emails that that Henry writes to Alex. They will melt your heart and make you wish that the person that you love wrote like this. My last selection is If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. Fresh from college graduation with a degree in fashion, Cindy longs to design shoes, but she's stuck. She has a designer's version of writer's block. But when the dating reality show that her stepmom produces before midnight has a sudden vacancy, Cindy agrees to help her out and step in. After all, the exposure could jumpstart her fashion career, and the prize money sure wouldn't hurt. What Cindy did not expect was being the only person of the plus size on the show makes her a role model for the entire nation that is glued to the TV. She also certainly didn't expect to fall for the Bachelor. Sometimes you need light. Some of the books are heavy, and sometimes you just need something that's just going to make you just feel good. And this is one of those reader fluff books that's fantastic. You need sweet. You need a story that has no stress involved in it. And sometimes you need all of it in one book, and this one will give it to you. Julie Murphy, this is her first adult book. She wrote Dumplin', which you may all know from being changed into a popular series, but the book is always better. And it turns out that this adult debut for her provides that perfection that we all long for an escape. Now, I actually read Cinderella retellings like this with a lot of hesitation. I have a step family. I have a stepdad that I don't call a stepdad. He's my bonus dad. I have 3 stepbrothers I absolutely adore and love, so I read Cinderella stories and I cringe. Not all step families are like that. I hope more actually reflect the way mine is. The neat thing is, Julie Murphy reflected my family in this one. Her stepmom adores her. Her stepsisters cannot wait for her to try and win. It is an amazing supportive story for family. May I suggest that when you pick up this book, you clear your calendar. I skipped exercise, I skipped house chores, I skipped all my weekday routines because I wanted to stay with Cindy and find out if she was going to get the Bachelor. The really cool thing is I loathe dating reality shows. Like, I loathe them. I see it on the TV as I'm flipping and I'm like, go away. I just cannot stand them. This book, it reflects a dating reality show, but it didn't affect my feelings for Cindy and The Bachelor. This was a pure delight. And when I gushed about it to Nallely, she had also read it, and I think it was Nallely, and she said, "Did you know it's a series?" Guess what I'm reading right now? Buy the book. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's so far just as good as the first one. So next up now is Reuben Ramirez with his recommendation. Oh, sorry, it's Nallely. I got it wrong.
Hello, thank you. So you'll usually find me over at the Rincon Library, so stop on by anytime you're in the area, especially coming up on July 9th, because Rincon will be celebrating their 30th birthday. Yes, that's right. Rincon has been in Livermore now for 30 years, since 1992. It's going to be a big shindig with a band and cupcakes and some other treats. Okay, so my first pick. This was so hard. Up until today, I even wanted to go and change it and put in some more or other ones because I'm an avid reader, much like Jennifer and all of our other librarians here. So my first pick is All My Rage by Sevilla. This is a young adult. It is contemporary, so that means it's set in current times. So brief summary. Lahore, Pakistan, then Mishpa, a dreamer and storyteller, newly married to Tufig is in an arranged match. They moved to the United States and opened the Clouds Rest Inn Motel. And yes, you heard that right. Inn and motel, same thing, but she really wanted to name it that. Hoping for a new start. And Juniper, California, now we have Salahudin and Noor are more than just best friends. They are family. However, the big fight destroys their bond. Now, Sal scrambles to run the family's motel as his mother's health fails and his grieving father loses himself in alcoholism. Noor, meanwhile, walks a harrowing tightrope, working at her wrathful uncle's liquor store while hiding the fact that she's applying for college to escape. So usually your family encourages you to apply for college. However, because she is living with her uncle, she actually caused him to not go to college and follow his dreams. So he's trying his best to stop her from following her dreams. And it's not a great situation. So all of these characters are not so great situations. We talk about family and how sometimes family isn't the safe haven you want them to be. It deals with a town ravaged by the opioid crisis. It deals with grief. And yes, the title is very fitting. You do experience anger, rage. You also experience sadness, but also happiness. I highly recommend this book. Pick it up. I was sobbing throughout the last few chapters as I was driving because I was listening to it in my car on the way home. So yes, that is a great book to pick up. And Sabah Tahir has actually written other books that are fantasy, so if you're looking for something else, try those. They're completely different, but just as good. My next recommendation was touted as a love story in space. However, The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schrafer is a lot more than that. So this book is a young adult sci-fi novel. So it's so much more than just a love story in space. It's a study in human emotion, the resiliency that humans show, striving to live on and continue the human race through creativity and advancements. So we have our two main characters, Ambrose and Kodiak. So they wake up in a spaceship, the coordinated endeavor. So Ambrose wakes up in the coordinated endeavor with no memory of the launch. His brooding shipmate, Kodiak, has barricaded himself away in his half of the ship. Slowly, things start getting strange, and they must learn to work together and trust one another in order to survive the ship's secret. That's right, the ship is sentient. It's talking to them and telling them things that they have to do in order for the ship not to blow up. And there is a great big secret that I'm not going to tell you about because it is so good. I still think about this book, and even weeks after having read it, it still blew my mind. I told everyone that was near me when I finished it, you need to read this book, you need to read this book right now so we can talk about it. So yes, please do read this book and then come and find me so we can talk about it. Okay, so my next pick here is a thriller with a dash of romance. So you might have heard this name, I don't know if you've heard this name, Colleen Hoover. She's been making the rounds, as a romance writer, but she also wrote this great gem, which is a thriller. And sometimes I just need a thriller or a mystery. This really fit the bill. I am really reluctant to read some of her romance because I heard that they will tear you apart before putting you back together, and sometimes I don't want that. But this one was right up there with the mystery aspect, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. So Lowen Ashley is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin when she accepts the job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford, husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford, has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in a successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. So the wife gets into a car accident and she is in a coma. So Lowen is hired to come into their house and stay and write the books. And upstairs is this wife who is in a coma. Now, I don't know about you, but this is already a creepy setting. And little by little, she's working her way through her chaotic office looking for notes. But instead of notes, she finds an unpublished, unfinished autobiography about Verity. And it is a very page-turning autobiography. Little by little, more and more bone-chilling confessions come out in this autobiography. And up until the end, you are convinced that this is a true autobiography. However, in the end, something comes to light, and then you are not sure if that was true or if another piece of writing is true. So it's really good. And so my friend, when I finished reading, my friend was like, are you team memoir or are you team letter? So yes, read this book and let me know which team you're on, and I can tell you what I believe really happened. Okay. And my fourth pick here is actually one of three books, the third book in a series of romance novels. So violinist Anna Sun finds herself incapacitated and burned out after going viral on YouTube. Then her longtime boyfriend announces he wants an open relationship. She decides to explore her options too. Enter tattooed motorcycle riding Quan Diet. But their attempts at having a flirty fling fails because Anna finds that Quan accepts her just as she is, unconditional, at an unconditional level that she has never been fully understood before. Sorry, I got a little bit tripped up there. But yes, so he understands her as she's never been understood before. So this is the third book in the series. The first one is The Kiss Quotient. The second one is The Bride Test. They're all by author Helen Kwan. It's a contemporary romance. It is labeled adult. Be warned. All of these 3 books deal with protagonists that have autism in one form or another. So as you might know, autism is actually kind of a spectrum. So it can affect them very much so, it can affect a person very much so, or just slightly so. And I really enjoyed the way that the author explained the different aspects of the protagonist's lives, how they were affected by being autistic or being on the autistic spectrum. And the love interest, Quan, he is so dreamy in this. He is very patient. He is exactly who you would want in a partner. He is patient, he is loving, he is understanding, and he never once blames Anna for her outbursts, for her different personality. And yeah, I like these books too because they show family relationships. So in all these books, they are related because there is different family members as that show up. And Anna's family is very different from Juan's family. And if you read, you'll find out why.
Nallely, do they have to be read in order?
More or less, yes. Yes. They are read in order because they do happen one after the other. And Quan is introduced in the first book. All right, so my next recommendation is Fuzz, and it does have a subtitle. Let me read that for you because it is hard to read, but it's a great subtitle. Fuzz, When Nature Breaks the Law, by Mary Roach. So what's to be done about a jaywalking moose, a bear caught breaking and entering, a murderous tree? 300 years ago, animals that broke the law would be assigned legal representation and put on trial. That's right, they didn't even have to be there. The answers are best found not in jurisprudence, but in science, the curious science of human-wildlife conflict, a discipline at the crossroads of human and wildlife biology. Roach reveals as much about humanity as about nature's lawbreakers. When it comes to problem wildlife, she finds humans are more often the problem and the solution. So you might know Mary Roach as having written one of her famous and first books, Stiff, which is about life as a morgue technician. And I read this back in college as an assignment, and I could not have been more surprised that I actually enjoyed reading the book. And even though it was nonfiction, it was very funny, and she brings this humor to everything she researches. She is a thorough researcher. She made trips out to all parts of the United States, Canada, India, Italy, and a lot of other places for her research. So what kind of animals do you expect to find in this book? There's bears who will enter a house, not disturb anything, very quietly tiptoe through your house and ransack your refrigerator and then leave, nothing else bothered. You will also find monkeys, macaws in India, who are the biggest pests. When they come up to you, take your food, or if you don't have any food in your hand, they'll take your phone until you give them food. Yeah, that's right. Or you'll find the gulls that are troubling the Vatican in Rome, and how to deal with those, or how they try to deal with those. So it's a very well-researched read. Even though it's nonfiction, you'll find yourself laughing along with everything. She has great asides. So yeah, go ahead and read, pick up this book and anything else by Mary Roach. All right, thank you for listening to me. And now I would like to present Reuben Ramirez and his great hits.
Good evening, everyone. Buenas tardes. Nehana konnichiwa. I'm trying to say hello in as many languages as I can. Prior to me coming here to Livermore Library, the majority of the stuff I read was nonfiction. I love nonfiction. It's painful, but it's needed. And over the last couple of years, Jennifer Mosel, reintroduced me to my first love, which was poetry and fiction. And she like opened my eyes and my heart to all kinds of young adult teen fiction. And like Jennifer said earlier, that's all marketing. Good literature is good literature, you know, whatever, however they decide to categorize it. So, thank you, Jennifer, for bringing me back to my literary roots. So with that in mind, I also want to remind folks that if you go to our catalog, you can actually find our picks. And you just have to go under, I think it's a username, and you can just type it in. We should have it in the information that you have in front of you. Mine is R.J. Ramirez. I know I'm very creative. This is my first initial and last name. So if you're interested in stuff I have to offer you tonight, go ahead and go through there. And everyone else here that spoke earlier also has their handles, so feel free to go through there as well. And talking about teen material, the first one I'm actually going to talk about is nonfiction. An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. Warning, only read this if you are prepared to have everything that's ever been taught to you about U.S. history, about indigenous peoples, about people of color in this country, from elementary to middle school to high school. As I said earlier, nonfiction is painful, but it's very beautiful. It opens your eyes, it opens your minds. And Roxanne talks about our history as a country, not just Native American, but our history as a country from the indigenous perspective. And it's a very brutal one. It's a very ugly one, but it is our history. She frames it from the lens of militarism and how this government used its military to take the land, the homes of millions and millions of people. We are on indigenous land. This is a lonely land right here. And as I said, it's painful, but I really suggest you read it. She details the roots of militarism, racism, and war lust in the original European and Euro-American conquest and slaughter of the continent's original habitats, inhabitants. This book details how the U.S. government's past drives its military policies and practices and how it justifies intervention in the affairs of other nations. So basically, she details how the government used the army to take this land and how the government and the military learned how to better hone their skills and not just use it against the indigenous peoples of this land, but also throughout the Western Hemisphere and throughout the globe. And it'll make you revisit U.S. history. If you have an opportunity, take time to read this book, and Indigenous Peoples History of the United States of America. The next one. Thank you to Nallely, because she's the one that said, Reuben, you have to read this book. And I said, okay, I'll read it. And it is Livermore, Undocumented, Unprotected, Unafraid by Romina Garber. And This is a really cool book. I loved it. I mean, come on, Argentine lore, werewolves and witches, football. Who doesn't like football? I mean, I can't play it worth a lick, but I like watching it. Fighting, gender roles, and identity, belonging, being the other in spaces where we're not wanted, and in the lives of the undocumented. And I love how she uses werewolves and she uses witches as analogies of who we are as a society. How what you see isn't what we are inside as human beings. And, you know, I haven't read fantasy in a long time, but this one really pulled me in, you know. And like I said, while this is definitely wide fantasy, it reads more like a contemporary fiction, sprinkled with magical realism. It sort of reminded me, in a sort of way, of Garcia Marquez, one of the greatest authors of all time, writers of all time. I'm not saying that it's the same, but just how she uses different worlds to talk about our world. You know, and Manu is a central character, Lobizano, and she comes to represent everyone who's ever wrongly been limited or boxed into labels that just don't simply because there's more convenient for everyone else. Once again, it's who we are in the inside, you know. And you know, this is an excellent blend of magical realism and contemporary fantasy, focusing on binaries and the spaces between them. And it's a love story. Reuben never reads love stories, but I was caught, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? Are they gonna do the right thing? Are her friends gonna actually be her friends? Are they gonna turn their backs against her? I can tell you, but that would like defeat the purpose. I want you guys to read it. It's a really good book. Once again, werewolves, witches, soccer, a little love story, a little going into different worlds. I think you all will really like it. So once again, Lobizano, and it is the first of a trilogy. So yeah, the next one. Just looking at this, I fell in love. I mean, look at that artwork. That is like, wow, that's beautiful. Cia Martinez and the moonlit beginning of everything. Once again, I have to thank my team librarians for recommending this book to me. It was a very challenging book for me to read because even though it's a sci-fi fantasy, you know, it's really looking at issues of immigration and looking at issues of, once again, being the other. Where do we fit in? And at the same time, once again, it's another love story. And it was like breaking my heart. And I was mending my heart, and it broke my heart, and it was mending my heart, you know, and you know, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful read. Basically, the sci-fi aspect totally blew me away. There's possible spaceships involved. There's possible aliens from other worlds involved. There's possible government involvement in all this. Have any of you ever seen the X-Files? Yeah, it'll probably remind you a little bit of the X-Files, because there's a little X-Files thing going on there. I was reading the book and I was hearing, I'm trying to read the book here, man. And once again, at the core, Sia is trying to understand who she is in two worlds, because she's Mexican American. Is she Mexican? Is she American? Is she both? And where do these aliens come in? What's going on? You know, and this right here plays a very central part of the book. The cacti. The cacti are in a certain way part of her family, part of her history. And this book melds her indigenous aspect of who she is, as well as the future of what's to come in society. And here's Sia stuck in the middle. I don't want to give too much away, but once again, it'll make you think about of who we are. The next one, Sanctuary by Paula Mendoza. Man. This one, once again, thanks to our teen librarians here for suggesting it to me. And oh my goodness, this was an even harder read for me, because just as a book that was mentioned earlier, this deals with contemporary issues of things that might have been and hopefully will not happen. Basically, it's what could have happened and this is fictionalized, but it's not so far-fetched. If our previous presidents would have would have won the election. Basically, immigrants are being rounded up. They're being chipped, and they're being taken to basically prisons. And the family has to leave. They have to go across the country from Maine to California, because California is a sanctuary state. That sort of sounds familiar, because it's sort of happening in other areas of our society. And along the journey, friendships are made. Teenagers have to grow up really quick, and they see the ugliness of racism and of people's inabilities to use their hearts and to use their own minds. But at the same time, they find and create their own family. And it's the journey of freedom, and trying to get to California, and everything that could be won and lost along that journey. And once again, even though it's sci-fi and it's a fantasy-ish type of read, it's not too far off from our realities and what could be, and why we have to fight so hard to help one another. So if you have time, Sanctuary by Paula Mendoza. The last one. I was actually going to choose another one, but Nallely reminded me that the one I was going to choose, we already did. So oh my gosh, I have to choose another one. And it just so happened to be that I just finished reading A House of My Own, Stories from My Life by Sandra Cisneros. And, oh man, this book, it's basically a memoir. It's the memoir of Sandra Cisneros. And Sandra Cisneros is one of my generation's best and greatest Chicana poets, essayist, writer, artist. She, along with a couple other authors and poets, really saved my life when I was about 19, 20 years old. Her books, I don't know if you ever heard of a book called A House on Mosel Street. That's the one that introduced the world to Sandra Cisneros. That book, along with My Wicked Wicked Ways and her other books, opened the door to me, learning about me, because prior to her, I didn't know that there were books written by people that looked like me. Everything I ever read was by Charles Dickens or Shakespeare, Jane Austen, and nothing against them. Those are really great books, really great literature, but it didn't talk to me about my experience. So reading this memoir, it was like a trip down memory lane for me. It was like, wow, Sandra had a serious life. I mean, she was like quite the renegade, you know, and she did things on her own terms. If you want to know what a writer is and what a poet is, a writer and a poet is someone who lives their experiences and someone who writes their experiences and reminds us that we can too. Sandra travels back into time, both literally and figuratively. This book are the memoirs of one of the most, like I said earlier, the most prolific Chicano writer, poet, essayist, and educator of my generation. Cisneros picks and plucks stories, poems, essays, and thoughts from throughout her literary career and personal, her story. Not his story, but her story. Because her stories need to be told, and she's telling it. Listening to her voice, because I actually, and this is what I suggest, read it, but if you have the opportunity, listen to it. We have it on audio format. She is one of the few writers who actually reads her own books, and it actually does a really excellent job. And it just, like I said, it just like blew me away. It made me laugh one second, made me cry the other second. I'm like, oh my God, you went through that too? Wow, you know. And then it's about her, you know, just her life, you know, and listening to her voice brought back so many memories for me, you know, and memories of literature, of academia, of living and growing up in the mean streets for me of East LA and the desolate roads of La Frontera and Chuco. That's what we call El Paso. That's where I'm from, El Paso, Texas. You know, and of being lost and finding myself, of traveling roads not traveled, and looking back on those paths of my life and saying, yes, now I know why the great Creator laid it out that way for me. You know, she had a challenging life, but through her experiences, she wrote House on Mosel Street. She wrote My Wicked Wicked Ways. It's life experiences that make a poet. It's the poet that writes the poems, and it's the writer that wrangles in life's moments, like harnessing words into paper. And it's the experiences, beautiful and painful, of a woman's experiences. It is learning to remember to be human. It is the real experience of being a person of color, a woman of color, of being the daughter of a Mexican father and a Mexican-American mom. It is the experiences of being a Chicana. Sandra Cisneros is a poet, she is a writer, she is a woman, she is a human being, she is a Chicana. And after reading her memoir, now she's still writing, and she's still alive, kicking and writing and everything, but it made me better appreciate her, and made me better appreciate all the writers and all the books that we've been telling you about, and expressing our heart to you to go out with me or listening to. So if you have an opportunity, and if any of these books that we talked about tonight sort of twinkled your ear or made you think, maybe I should read these books, they're all right here. And I think they're all available for checkout. Don't run over each other to get them. But they're all right here. And once again, like I said earlier, go to our website, go to our catalog, type in our handle, and you can get everything that we were talking about tonight, as well as others that we have done over the years. So, thank you.